the desire for beauty and status. In the heart of Orombai village, nestled between vast golden fields and towering baobab trees, lived a young woman named Ajani. She was known for her grace and natural beauty, her smooth ebony skin, bright eyes, and the way her laughter carried through the village like a melody. But despite her charm, she was not the most beautiful woman in Orombai. Her mother, Mama Idaya, however, refused to accept that. Mama Idaya had always believed that beauty was power. And in their small village, power came through marriage to wealth. She had set her sights on one goal, marrying Ajani off to Beo, the only son of Chief Otomba, the wealthiest man in the region. Beo was a man of high taste and high standards, influenced by the traders and travelers from the distant city. Unlike most men in the village, he wanted a woman who stood out, curvier, taller, with exaggerated beauty. He had already dismissed many of the village girls, claiming they were too ordinary. Ajani never cared for Beo. He was arrogant and proud, looking at people as if they were beneath him. She had many suitors, hard-working young men who saw her for more than just her looks. Men like Kofi, the farmer with a kind heart, or Jide, the hunter who always brought her fresh mangoes. But Mama Idaya would chase them away. "These men have nothing to offer you," she would scold Ajani. "You will marry Beo, and we will rise above this poverty. Do you want to live like me, scraping for food, wearing the same wrapper for years? No, my daughter. You will have gold, silk, and a house grander than any in this village." Ajani sighed. "But, Mama, I don't love Beo. He doesn't even notice me." Mama Idaya's face darkened. "Then we will make him notice you." A desperate search for transformation. One evening, as the village gathered by the river to celebrate a harvest festival, Beo arrived in all his glory, adorned in fine clothing imported from the city. The women whispered excitedly, adjusting their headscarves and beaded jewelry, each hoping to catch his attention. Ajani, despite her mother's constant urging, remained at the back of the crowd. But Beo's eyes never found her. Instead, he was captivated by Zena, a merchant's daughter who had just returned from the city, her body curvier, her skin glowing unnaturally, and her hair flowing in elaborate curls. Mama Idaya saw the way Beo's gaze followed Zena, how his lips curled into admiration, and she gritted her teeth in frustration. That night, as they returned home, she stormed into their small hut, pacing back and forth. "Did you see the way he looked at her?" Zena left the village plain and returned looking like a goddess. "And now she will have him. That should be you, Ajani." Ajani frowned. "Mama, I am happy as I am. If Beo does not want me for who I am, then why should I change?" Mama Idaya ignored her words, deep in thought. She needed to do something drastic. Meeting Madam Coco. The next morning, Mama Idaya left the village in secret, making her way to the market town miles away. There, in a dimly lit alley, she found Madam Coco, a woman known for her connections to mystical beauty enhancements. Madam Coco sat behind a heavy wooden table, her nails long and painted black. Her sharp eyes pierced through Mama Idaya as she approached. "What do you seek?" she asked in a low voice. Mama Idaya leaned in, whispering, "My daughter must be the most beautiful in our village. She must stand out. I need something." Madam Coco smiled, revealing teeth too sharp for a normal woman. "You want transformation? But beauty comes at a cost." Mama Idaya hesitated. "How much?" "Not in money," Madam Coco said, shaking her head. "There is an ancient ritual, a rare process. It will give your daughter a body unlike any other, fuller curves, flawless skin, unmatched beauty. But once started, there is no going back." Mama Idaya's hands trembled. "Will it make Beo notice her?" Madam Coco chuckled. "It will make all men notice her." Mama Idaya's heart pounded. She knew it was unnatural. But she had already convinced herself this was the only way. The decision. That night, Mama Adaora returned to the village, her mind made up. She sat Ajani down, clutching her hands tightly. My daughter, I have found a way. There is a ritual, a gift that will make you more beautiful than you ever imagined. It will make Beo yours. Ajani recoiled. Mama, no. I do not want this. Mama Adaora's face hardened. You think love will feed you? Will keep a roof over your head? You are a fool, Ajani. You must do this for our future. Tears welled in Ajani's eyes. Mama, what if something goes wrong? But Mama Adaora refused to listen. She held Ajani's chin, whispering, just trust me, my daughter. Beauty is power. And power is survival. Ajani felt trapped. The weight of her mother's words, the pressure of expectation, and the fear of disappointing her family suffocated her. At last, she closed her eyes and nodded. The ritual would happen. Somewhere in the distance, a cold wind blew through the trees, as if the spirits themselves were watching. The forbidden ritual of beauty. The night before the ritual, Ajani sat outside her home, staring at the moon. Her heart was heavy with uncertainty, yet her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Beauty is power. And power is survival. A cold wind whispered through the trees. It was as if the spirits were watching, waiting. The journey to the shrine. Before dawn, Mama Adaora and Ajani set off toward the deep forest, moving silently through the mist. Ajani's hands trembled, but her mother's grip was firm. They walked for hours, the air growing thick with moisture and the scent of earth. Then, through the trees, they saw a hidden shrine carved into a cliffside, covered in twisted vines and ancient symbols. Standing at the entrance was Nana Igil, the feared old priestess of the forgotten gods. She was dressed in layers of cloth, her skin painted with sacred symbols. Her voice, deep and knowing, pierced the silence. You come seeking beauty. But do you understand the price? Mama Adaora stepped forward. We understand. The priestess's piercing eyes studied Ajani, as if reading her soul. And you, child? Do you wish for this? Ajani hesitated. No, she didn't. But the weight of her mother's expectations crushed her will. Slowly, she nodded. Nana Igil sighed. Very well. But know this, beauty taken unnaturally must always be repaid. Ajani's stomach twisted, but she said nothing as they followed the priestess deeper into the shrine. The ritual of transformation. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of burning herbs. The walls were lined with ancient carvings, depicting women with exaggerated beauty and their eventual decay. Ajani shivered. She wanted to run. But it was too late. The priestess handed her a bowl filled with a thick, black liquid. Drink. Ajani stared at the liquid. It smelled of earth and blood, like something pulled from the depths of the underworld. She turned to her mother, but Mama Adaora only nodded eagerly. Tears welled in Ajani's eyes as she raised the bowl to her lips and drank. The effect was instantaneous. A searing pain shot through her body. Her bones twisted, stretched. Her skin burned as if fire ran through her veins. She collapsed onto the stone floor, gasping for air. She could hear voices, not of the priestess, nor her mother, but something else. You have taken what is not yours. It will be returned. Ajani's vision blurred as the pain overwhelmed her. The last thing she saw was Nana Igil shaking her head, whispering words of warning into the wind. The transformation. When Ajani woke, the pain was gone. She sat up, blinking in confusion. Something felt different. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth. Ajani. You are perfect. Ajani looked down at herself. Her waist was smaller, her hips wider, her skin smoother than silk. Her eyes shone brighter, and her lips were fuller. She stumbled to a water basin, her hands trembling as she looked at her reflection. She was unrecognizable. A goddess. For a moment, she was mesmerized by her own beauty. Mama Adaora laughed with joy. It worked. Beo will beg to marry you now. Ajoni, still in shock, let her mother pull her away from the shrine. But as they left, Nana Ijio watched them go with sorrowful eyes. Foolish woman, the priestess whispered. You have awakened a debt that can never be repaid. They returned to the village. When they reached the village, the reaction was immediate. Women stopped what they were doing. Men stared with wide eyes. Children whispered in awe. Is that Ajoni? She looks like a spirit. Ajoni walked through the village, her new beauty shining under the sun. She felt a mix of pride and unease. Then, as they approached Beo's family compound, she saw him. Beo, the son of Chief Otomba, stood tall and proud, his usual indifference written on his face. But when he saw Ajoni, his eyes widened. For the first time ever, he noticed her. And in that moment, Ajoni believed the ritual had worked. She had won. But far away, in the shadows of the shrine, something ancient stirred, waiting to collect its debt. The wedding of the year, but a dark omen appears. The village had never seen anything like it. Word of Ajoni's transformation spread like wildfire. Every girl wanted to be her, and every man wanted to have her. Her beauty was no longer human, it was ethereal, otherworldly, almost unnatural. And for the first time, Beo noticed her. He pursued her relentlessly, showering her with attention. He would arrive at her home with the finest fabrics, golden jewelry, and gifts imported from the city. He spoke sweet words, telling her how she was the most beautiful woman in the entire kingdom. Mama Adaora couldn't contain her joy. She boasted to the villagers about her daughter's luck, how Beo had finally chosen Ajoni above all others. When Beo's father, Chief Otomba, heard of his son's decision, he quickly arranged a grand wedding. It was to be the biggest wedding the village had ever seen, a union of beauty and wealth. The wedding preparations. The women of the village prepared Ajoni for the ceremony. They bathed her in scented oils, dressed her in the finest woven cloth, and adorned her with golden beads that jingled with each step she took. Even the elder women, who once whispered that Ajoni was not special enough, now sang her praises. You are the jewel of Orombai, Ajoni, they said. A true queen. Ajoni should have been happy. But deep inside, something felt wrong. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize the woman staring back at her. Her eyes were too bright. Her smile too perfect. Her skin too flawless. She touched her face, feeling a strange tightness. But she pushed the thought away. Today was her wedding day. A dark omen. As the ceremony began, the village gathered under the grand baobab tree, where generations had wed before them. Drums pounded, voices sang in celebration, and laughter filled the air. But then, something changed. A cold wind rushed through the crowd. The sky darkened unnaturally, even though the sun had been shining moments before. The drums faltered, and the villagers shivered in confusion. Then, from the edge of the gathering, a figure appeared. It was Nana Ijio, the priestess. She walked slowly through the crowd, her wrinkled face grim, her eyes filled with warning. Stop this wedding, she cried. Gasps rippled through the villagers. Mama Adaora stiffened. Ajoni felt her chest tighten. This union cannot happen, Nana Ijio declared, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Chief Otomba stood, his face twisted in anger. Why do you bring bad luck to my son's wedding, old woman? The priestess ignored him. Her gaze locked onto Ajoni. Beauty stolen from the spirits is never truly yours, she said. And the spirits always take back what was borrowed, with interest. Ajoni's breath caught in her throat. Her hands felt cold. Mama Adaora stepped forward angrily. Enough, she hissed. You are only jealous that my daughter is the most beautiful in the land. You have no power here. Nana Ijeo's face did not change. She only shook her head. Then let her prove it, the priestess whispered. She reached into her robes and threw a small handful of white powder into the air. A hush fell over the crowd as the powder settled onto Ajoni's skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the nightmare began. The first signs of decay. Ajoni felt a sharp, stinging sensation on her face. She reached up to touch her cheek, and her fingers came away with flakes of skin. The villagers gasped. A faint, dark patch appeared near her jaw, spreading slightly. It was small, barely noticeable, but Nana Ijeo nodded grimly. The spirits have already begun to reclaim what is theirs, she murmured. Mama Adaora grabbed Ajoni's arm and yanked her away. This wedding will continue, she snapped. And so, despite the warnings, the ceremony went on. But the air of celebration had changed. The villagers whispered. Some women clutched their beads and muttered prayers. Ajoni forced herself to smile. To pretend everything was fine. She ignored the burning sensation creeping across her skin. She ignored the way her hands trembled as she took vows. She ignored the fear gnawing at her heart. Because she had won. She had married the wealthiest man in the village. But somewhere deep inside, she knew. The price had not yet been paid. The cracks in perfection. Ajoni should have been the happiest woman in Orombai. She had everything she had ever been told to want, wealth, status, and the most admired man in the village. But deep inside, she felt uneasy. She tried to ignore it. She smiled, laughed, danced, and lived as the perfect wife of Baal. Yet, the unease never left her. And soon, the first signs of the curse became impossible to ignore. The first signs. It started subtly. One morning, Ajoni woke up to a strange tightness in her skin. She touched her face and felt a patch of roughness on her cheek. It was small, like dry skin, but when she rubbed it, it flaked off unnaturally. She gasped and rushed to the polished bronze mirror. The reflection staring back at her was still beautiful, but something was off. The skin under her eyes looked darker, her cheeks slightly sunken. Her lips, once full and soft, felt dry. A chill ran through her spine. No, it must be the weather, she told herself. I'm just tired. She rubbed oils and creams on her skin, hoping it would go away. It didn't. Baal's indifference. Baal, ever obsessed with beauty, barely noticed at first. He was too busy basking in the admiration of the village, parading Ajoni around like a prize trophy. Whenever they entered the marketplace, the people would gasp and murmur, whispering about how stunning she was. Baal grinned with pride whenever he heard the praise. Yet, as the days passed, Ajoni started seeing something different in his gaze. A slight hesitation when he looked at her. A faint frown when she wasn't watching. A growing distance in his touch. Did he see it too? The mirror's truth. One evening, Ajoni sat before her mirror, alone in her chambers. She removed her jewelry, letting the golden beads clatter to the table. Then, with trembling hands, she removed her headscarf and leaned closer. The change was undeniable. Her skin looked stretched and dry, almost like aged leather. Her once bright eyes were duller, as though something was draining the life from them. And the worst part. Her cheekbones looked sharper. Not in an elegant way, but as if the flesh beneath was shrinking. Her heart pounded. No. No, no, no. She frantically rubbed her face, as if she could wipe away the decay. Her fingers scratched against something rough. She yanked her hand away, staring in horror at the tiny flake of dead skin stuck to her fingertips. It was peeling. Her beauty was peeling away. A growing horror. From that night forward, the changes became faster. Her once smooth arms began to show dark, uneven patches. Her shoulders ached constantly, as though her body was collapsing under an invisible weight. She hid it well at first, wearing longer dresses, thicker scarves, and heavier makeup. But she could not stop the whispers. The villagers noticed. Women whispered behind their hands. Men cast curious glances, their admiration dimming. Even Beo started looking at her differently. One night, as they lay in bed, Ajoni reached for his hand. He flinched. It was subtle, just a small hesitation. But Ajoni felt it. A dagger straight to her chest. Mama Idaya's denial. Desperate, Ajoni turned to her mother. Mama, something is wrong. Mama Idaya waved her hand dismissively. Stop being foolish. You are still the most beautiful woman in the village. Ajoni's voice cracked. Mama, my skin, it's changing. My body feels different. Her mother grabbed her hands and squeezed. Listen to me, Ajoni, she said firmly. You have the life I always dreamed of for you. You are married to a rich man. You have wealth, respect, power. Don't let your mind trick you into thinking something is wrong. Ajoni hesitated. Could it just be in her head? She nodded slowly. But that night, when she removed her scarf and saw another patch of skin peeling off her shoulder, revealing the raw, darkened flesh beneath, she knew. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. The first maggot. The final straw came on a quiet morning, just before sunrise. Ajoni sat before her mirror, slowly untying her scarf. She had avoided looking at herself for days. But now, she had to see. She took a deep breath, let the fabric slip from her shoulders, and a small, white maggot wriggled from the peeling skin near her collarbone. Ajoni screamed. She stumbled backward, clutching her chest, shaking uncontrollably. Her breathing turned ragged, her heart pounding like a drum. No, this can't be real. She forced herself to look again. The maggot was gone. Had she imagined it? Was she losing her mind? Tears ran down her face. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Something was inside her. Something was eating her away. The village begins to whisper. That day, Ajoni stayed inside. She refused to go to the market. She avoided the mirrors. But she could not stop the rumors. The village had begun to notice her change. Ajoni does not look the same, some whispered. She was so beautiful before, but now. I heard her skin is peeling like a snake. Even the village children began to point when she walked by. Look at her face, they would say, giggling. It looks strange. Ajoni felt the world closing in around her. The attention she once craved now felt like a curse. The whispers, the stares, the doubt in Beo's eyes. It was all too much. She could not escape what was happening to her. And deep inside, she knew. The spirit had come to reclaim what she had stolen. The curse reveals itself. The nightmare was no longer something Ajoni could hide. Her beauty was vanishing faster than she could cover it. The dark patches on her skin spread to her arms, her back, her legs. Her once full cheeks sank inward, making her look hollow and lifeless. Her lips, once soft and full, were cracked and dry, as if they were withering away. And the worst part. The maggots were real. The maggots and the horror of decay. It happened one night, in the privacy of her chamber. Ajoni had undressed to bathe, staring into the mirror with silent horror. Her body, once envied, adored, worshipped, was rotting. The patches of dark, peeling skin were worse than before. But then, as she ran her fingers over her shoulder, something wriggled beneath the surface. A lump moved under her skin. Ajani froze in terror. No, 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 no. She dug her nails into her flesh, scratching desperately. Until a small, white maggot crawled out from beneath her skin. She screamed. She fell to the floor, shaking, gasping, trying to wipe it away. But another one wiggled out from her collarbone. Then another. And another. Her hands clawed at her body, desperately trying to stop it. She felt something crawling beneath her scalp. Her chest tightened. She could barely breathe. Then the door burst open. Beo stood there. And he saw everything. Beo's horror and betrayal. His face twisted in disgust. What is this? His voice shook. Ajani tried to cover herself, tears streaming down her face. Beo, please. I don't know what's happening to me. But Beo staggered back. This isn't normal, he whispered. This isn't natural. Ajani's heart shattered. He had once called her the most beautiful woman in the world. Now, he looked at her as if she were a monster. He turned to the doorway. Then he shouted for his father. The village knows the truth. Chief Otomba arrived in moments, followed by the village elders. By now, half the village had gathered outside. When they saw Ajani's condition, they recoiled in horror. Gasps filled the air. This is not the work of nature, one elder said. This is a curse. Ajani, wrapped in a cloth, fell to her knees. She sobbed. Please, someone help me. But no one stepped forward. Even Beo's love had disappeared. I was deceived, he spat, stepping away from her. You're cursed. Ajani's heart broke into pieces. Mama Idaya rushed into the crowd, her face pale with fear. She just needs medicine, Mama Idaya said desperately. It's nothing. But the elders shook their heads. This is not sickness. This is the work of the spirits. Ajani could not breathe. The village, the same people who had once worshipped her beauty, now looked at her with fear and disgust. And she knew. The curse was real. She was paying the price for what she had taken. The plea for salvation. That night, Ajani and Mama Idaya fled to the forest. They returned to Nana Ijeo's shrine, desperate for a cure. The old priestess stood waiting. She had known they would come. I warned you, Nana Ijeo said. Now the spirits are reclaiming what you stole. Mama Idaya fell to her knees, sobbing. Please. Please, help my daughter. Undo it. Ajani, shaking, could barely speak. Tell me how to stop this, she whispered. Tell me what I must do. Nana Ijeo sighed. There is only one way, she said. You must give back something greater than what you took. Ajani's stomach turned. Something greater. What do I have left to give? She asked weakly. The priestess looked into her eyes. Your soul. The final choice. Ajani froze. Give up her soul. Did that mean her life? She turned to Mama Idaya, trembling. Her mother's face was twisted with guilt and terror. Mama Idaya had forced this on her. Had pressured her into changing who she was. And now, she would have to pay the ultimate price. A deep silence filled the shrine. Then, with a slow breath, Ajani nodded. If this is the price, I will pay it. Mama Idaya screamed. No. No, Ajani, I did this for you. I only wanted you to have the best life. But Ajani only smiled sadly. I just wanted to be loved, Mama. And with that, she stepped forward toward Nana Ijeo. The desperate search for a cure. Ajani stood before Nana Ijil, her body trembling, her once beautiful skin covered in patches of decay. Her soul was the price to undo the curse. But was there another way? Mama Idaya refused to accept it. No. We will find another solution, she cried, grabbing Ajani's arm. But the old priestess shook her head. There is no other way, she said. The spirits do not give without taking. The balance must be restored. Mama Idaya fell to the ground, wailing. Ajani closed her eyes. She had been chasing beauty. And now, it had cost her everything. Was this how her story would end? A mother's desperate gamble. But Mama Idaya was not ready to lose her daughter. She stormed out of the shrine, dragging Ajani with her. We will find someone else, she hissed. Ajani, too weak to argue, stumbled after her mother. They traveled to distant villages, seeking herbalists, diviners, healers. But no one could undo what had been done. The few who tried only made it worse. One herbalist bathed Ajani in enchanted oils. For a moment, her skin appeared to heal. But by nightfall, her hands had begun to rot. Another healer burned sacred herbs around her body. Ajani coughed violently. By the next morning, her voice was nearly gone. She was breaking apart. And no one could stop it. The ultimate betrayal. As days passed, Mama Idaya's desperation turned to madness. She had lost everything. Her daughter's beauty. The rich marriage. Her own reputation. And then, one night, she did something unthinkable. She returned to Nana Ijil. Alone. And she begged. Please, take my daughter's curse away, she pleaded. The priestess looked at her with cold, knowing eyes. The price remains the same, she said. A soul. Mama Idaya hesitated. She knew what she had to do. And so, she made a choice. She left Nana Ijil's shrine and went to the only person who could remove Ajani from the world. She went to the chief's guards. And she whispered in their ears. My daughter is cursed. She is bringing evil upon this village. She must be removed. Ajani's betrayal and capture. That night, Ajani sat by a small fire, shivering from the pain in her body. Her legs barely walked. Her arms were thinner than they should be. She did not know what was happening to her. Then, she heard footsteps. She turned. And saw the village guards rushing toward her. Fear gripped her. Wait. Please, she screamed, trying to run. But her mother stepped forward. With tears in her eyes, Mama Idaya pointed at her. This is not my daughter, she whispered. She is cursed. She must be banished. Ajani's heart shattered. The last person she had left had abandoned her. The trial of the cursed woman. The next morning, the entire village gathered in the square. Ajani was brought before Chief Otomba, her hands bound. People whispered, gasped, and pointed at her. The once adored woman now looked like a living corpse. Her skin was peeling. Her hair had thinned. Her eyes had sunken into her skull. Beo stood at the front, looking at her with pure disgust. This is what you have become, he said coldly. The chief turned to the crowd. This woman brought a curse upon herself, he declared. She sought beauty through unnatural means, and now, she is paying the price. He raised a hand. She must be banished from Orombai forever. Ajani collapsed to the ground. Tears streamed down her sunken cheeks. She looked at her mother, silently begging. But Mama Idaya would not meet her gaze. She had chosen her own survival over her daughter. And so, Ajani was cast out. The journey into darkness. 2 guards dragged Ajani to the village border. They threw her into the dust, leaving her alone in the wild. The last thing she heard was her mother's whisper. "I'm sorry." Then the gate slammed shut. Ajani lay in the dirt, gasping for breath. Her body was nearly broken. Her soul was shattered. She had no home, no family, no future. And so, with the last of her strength, she crawled into the jungle and disappeared. The final choice, vanity's price. The jungle was dark and silent. Ajani crawled deeper and deeper, her body weak, her skin peeling, her breath ragged. She had been cast out. Betrayed. Forgotten. She had once been the most beautiful woman in Orombai. Now, she was a cursed thing, left to rot in the wilderness. And yet, she was still alive. For days, she wandered alone, feeding on wild fruits and drinking from hidden streams. But her body continued to decay. Her skin cracked and bled. Her hair fell in strands. Her limbs grew weaker, slower. Until finally, she collapsed at the edge of a sacred grove. And there, waiting for her, stood Nana Igeo. The priestess's final warning. The old priestess looked down at Ajani with sorrowful eyes. "You have reached the end of your path, child," she said. Ajani tried to speak, but her voice was too weak. Nana Igeo crouched beside her. "The spirits gave you beauty," she whispered. "But it was never yours to keep." Ajani closed her eyes. She already knew the truth. The beauty had been borrowed. And now, the spirits were taking it back. "Is there nothing left for me?" she whispered. Nana Igeo placed a hand on her forehead. "There is only one choice left." Ajani forced her eyes open. And the priestess said, "You can let go and pass peacefully into the spirit world. Or you can remain. But if you stay, you will never be human again." Ajani's heart pounded weakly. "What do you mean?" Nana Igeo's gaze darkened. "The spirits do not simply take. They transform." She gestured around the grove. And for the first time, Ajani saw them. Figures hidden in the shadows. Watching. Waiting. They were not quite human. Not quite spirits. They were something in between. Creatures of vanity. Women who had once stolen beauty, and had been cursed to remain forever, neither living nor dead. Ajani's breath hitched. "This is my fate." Nana Igeo nodded. "Unless you choose to let go." Ajani's body trembled. She had already lost everything. Her beauty. Her home. Her family. Her love. But even now, she was afraid to die. She was not ready to vanish into nothing. And so, she made her choice. She whispered, "I will stay." Nana Igeo's face was unreadable. But she only nodded once. Then it is done. The birth of a legend. That night, Ajani's body changed one final time. She did not die. But she did not remain human. Her skin turned ashen, her eyes hollow and dark, her body weightless like mist. She became one of them. One of the cursed spirits of vanity. One of the warnings for all who sought beauty through unnatural means. She roamed the jungle, unseen by most. A whisper in the wind. A reflection in still water. A shadow at the edge of mirrors. Watching. Waiting. And when young women, desperate for beauty, ventured too far into the wilderness, she would appear. And she would warn them. "Do not make the same mistake I did." But if they did not listen, she would watch them fall to the same fate. Just as she had. Just as so many before her had. Just as so many after her would. The fate of Mama Idaya. Back in Orombai, Mama Idaya never recovered from what she had done. She had betrayed her own daughter. For wealth. For power. For beauty. And yet, she had lost everything. Beo married another woman. The village shunned her. She spent her remaining years in shame, whispering to herself. I only wanted what was best for her. I only wanted what was best for her. But no one listened. Because no one cared anymore. She had once wanted to be the mother of the most beautiful woman in the village. Now, she was nothing. Just an old woman haunted by ghosts. The moral of the story. True beauty is not something that can be stolen, it is something that comes from within. Chasing vanity at the cost of your soul will always lead to ruin. What is taken unnaturally will always be reclaimed with interest. Beware the price of false beauty. And so, the legend of Ajoni, the cursed beauty, was passed down for generations. A warning. A lesson. And a reminder that some prices are too great to pay.